Welcome back to my YouTube channel, everybody. Today, my guest is my longtime friend, Malcolm Nance, who's a military expert. I would say the best of the best, the world-leading military expert, former senior chief petty officer with the Navy, author of many books. I have a couple here that I can show. The first one is called Hacking ISIS, which is about how to counter jihad from a cybersecurity point of view. The other one is called The Plot to Destroy Democracy, which is about Russia's interference in Western elections. And you wrote many other books, the last of which is called They Want to Kill Americans, that is about the Trump insurgency. Did I forget anything relevant that we have to say to introduce you, Malcolm?
No, they're all New York Times bestsellers. That's all that really matters here. But no, thank you very much for a very gentle introduction.
Well, I forgot to say what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the Trump new administration and its impact in geopolitical war politics, and in particular about, of course, from a military point of view, because that's your field of expertise. Well, your field of expertise is just this one. You're an expert in a lot of other things, but let me say that this is probably what you are most famous for. Malcolm, I would like you to comment on the latest news. So, your next president recently talked about invading Greenland, making Canada the 51st state of the Union, and taking control of the Panama Canal again. Is anything of that really happened? And if not, why did he say something that crazy?
The funny thing is when you say something like that to me, when you ask a question like that, I think about the time that when I lived in Italy. I lived in Sardinia, I lived in Sicily, I lived in the mainland, and I just think, Madonna, you know, it's just crazy. Pazzo, yeah?
Yeah.
It's this crazy talk. But as we know about Donald Trump, there is no such thing as just crazy talk. I was recently on a podcast by Jill Wine-Banks, former prosecutor on Watergate, former general counsel of the Defense Department, very high profile individual. And she asked me the same question. And I said, look, it's not Trump himself who is having these discussions and bringing them up to him. It's other people who think that there is some advantage for them in what could only be described as a crazy idea. The concept of buying Greenland was brought up in 2019, and it was immediately dismissed. But with a person like Donald Trump, who is not very intelligent, okay, I'm not going to mince words here. I spent decades in U.S. intelligence, and I know a person who is educated versus someone who is just crafty. Trump is crafty. He is not a smart person at all. I am, the very fact that they mention Greenland as an advantage to the United States means that somebody has probably briefed him that the Arctic Ocean is melting, that there are pathways now with icebreakers where one could go from the North Atlantic through Greenland, the Denmark Straits, around Greenland, where the shelf is melting and is making what was once completely unnavigable, except by only the strongest icebreakers in the world, and under it with atomic submarines. Somebody has convinced him or explained to him that there's money to be made if we could start using that route to Asia, right? Not only that, Greenland is melting due to climate change. What would have been miles deep sheets of ice, right? Going back a billion years, of global cooling is now being exposed. And there are people who are clearly not entrepreneurial, but almost imperial, who think that this place, which, by the way, was named Greenland for the reason of
Yeah.
fooling cartographers and any uneducated people into believing that that was a great place to go, right? Greenland is 100% ice. And the other trick was Iceland naming itself Iceland when in fact it's green. So unfortunately for Donald Trump, He is not one of the people that understood this. But someone has clearly gone to him and explained that there is probably, mining to be done there on a massive global industrial scale. His son, Donald Trump Jr., mentioned rare earth elements, which are what we call the minerals of the future. Most of these, rare earth minerals or rare earth elements are actually molded together in these molten slags, but only now has technology allowed them to be segregated. A very simple one like silicon was a rare earth element that was rarely exploited until the 1960s when we needed them for microchips and microcircuits. So a lot of material is there that they think is going to be exposed to climate change, and somebody who sees dollar signs when they see Greenland really has convinced Trump that we need to just take it. Now, his logic the other day in his press conference was that it's a halfway point between Britain and the United States and that we should have that for strategic purposes. Yeah, if you're flying C-46 Dakotas in World War II, right? And you're taking these short haul airplanes from, Boston to Halifax, Halifax to Nuuk in Greenland, and then Greenland to Iceland, Iceland to the Faroe Islands, Faroe Islands to England. That's how they were flown in World War II. That is not how, with modern air travel, we need a base between, England and England and the United States. We have this thing called jets. They fly intercontinentally, even the smallest of which can fly that way. But he mentioned this. So when I say these things, I'm not joking. He actually mentioned that we needed it for strategic purposes. He doesn't have an understanding of the word strategy, because this gives us no strategy. And I think that in his mind, which is, by the way, man is 78 years old, clearly in mental decline, clearly in mental decline. I mean, this is a guy who was standing on stage dancing to songs during the election season. And someone has put this crazy thought into his head and has explained to them that tiny little Denmark has operational control over Greenland. So his son goes up there the other day with Charlie Kirk, who's a young political guy from a group called Turning Point USA, and finds, I'm not joking, like 8 hobos, 8 homeless people, including one individual who was under a bridge, brought them to the hotel, served them a meal, put Make America Great Again hats on them, and then came back and were manufacturing their own reality that the people of Greenland love them. Well, when you go to a homeless shelter in the middle of a Arctic winter and you feed people five-star hotel food and put a red hat on them and they don't speak English, yeah, it's going to look awesome in the photographs. Look, this is madness, but the problem is there is a method of someone behind this madness. So don't discount this.
No, I won't. And Malcolm, up to
Oh,
last,
I have my espresso.
go ahead.
Mm.
Go ahead. That
I'm
looks
sorry,
like a,
because that's crazy.
I know. That looks like a big cup for an espresso. And being an Italian, I cannot avoid pointing that out. But okay, you have triple.
Doppio, doppio.
Doppio, doppio. Up to last week or 2 weeks ago, the most important question about Trump would have been Ukraine. So we know that he's not clear. He's not clear about what he's going to do because he said he wants to stop the war within 24 hours. But we also know that he has been very supportive of Putin and the other way around. For instance, I remember when the leader of ISIS, al-Baghdadi, was killed, that he thanked Russia a scary amount of times instead of actually thanking his allies such as Canada or the United Kingdom. What do you think will happen there? Will the United States pull out from the Western support to Ukraine, in your opinion?
I don't think that he can. I don't think that he
Mm.
will right away. Look, as we've just seen with this discussion about Greenland, Donald Trump is a very transactional person. He's really corrupt to the core. I mean, this is all about, for Trump, what's in it for me? And this is where Zelensky sort of has him over a barrel. He explained to Trump very clearly the money that the United States gives to Ukraine is not going to Ukraine. It's going to weapons manufacturers in the United States in districts that he won. So if he cuts funding to Ukraine, those districts lose money. And he will lose electoral support. He will lose support from the defense establishment that is looking forward to having a lot more money thrown into them to replace weapons and equipment that the United States has donated to Ukraine. It is financially in the United States' interest to give weapons and equipment to Ukraine because they create jobs in America. The question is, who's he going to listen to? Is he going to allow that to impact him, the big money from the Pentagon, or is he going to listen to his boss, Vladimir Putin? And I think he's going to try to, split the difference, because if there's money to be made here, if the discussion is about cash, Donald Trump is going to be there. And he's going to, people are going to explain it to him very clearly. Vladimir Putin is not going to give you money. Vladimir Putin is not going to get votes for you when artillery shells that are made in Altoona, Pennsylvania, stop flowing and they have to fire 500-600 workers. So we'll see how transactional he really is. Also, there are systems that have been put in place. The funding has already been approved for the next year. Whatever he does is going to put him over a barrel. And if he shows that he's more loyal to Russia than Ukraine is already making headway with Europe to produce its own artillery shells. They have a Rheinmetall artillery shell production facility now that they say can produce as many as 1 million shells a year. They've got the Tamida drone that's an advanced jet-powered drone that they're putting in there. They're starting to build their own ballistic missiles. Here's another point. Whoever supports Ukraine at the end of this war is going to get an enormous defense contract windfall. That means if Lockheed Martin does not want to support Ukraine or give weapon systems to Ukraine, then European countries are going to take those contracts. And so let me tell you, Ukraine doesn't care who does it. But there are companies out there, MBDA, in Germany, that are producing the same weapon systems as the United States. Sweden, in some instances, their weapon systems are much better than those that the United States are producing in terms of their armored personnel carriers and the upgrades to these tanks. Let me tell you something. If we want to be shut out of that market, well, then we need to close our eyes and pretend that the war in Europe doesn't exist. And believe me, Russian weapons will never sell in this world again. Just 2 days ago, I believe, Serbia cut contracts with Russia. Serbia and Russia are tight like this. And they've cut contracts with Russia because Russian weapons suck. And Serbia is now surrounded by Croatia, Montenegro, Kosovo, and they are getting advanced NATO weapons. They could crush Serbia in the case of another war. So, no one's going to be buying from Russia except for, rifle ammunition, and maybe not even that. Even the Ukrainians have gone away from Russian weapon systems and scrapping the old ones and getting new Western ones. So we shall see about this. But I think President Zelensky understands that Donald Trump's the kind of person that can be bought off through advanced interests through the other people who have money around him.
And of course, here we have the other side of the coin, that is Israel. And this is even more complex because while in Ukraine we have somebody invading somebody else, of course, the Middle East is a mess that has been going on for decades. And I must admit that a few Israeli friends of mine were happy with the elections of Trump. What do you think will happen there? What do you think that Trump will support there?
Yeah, there's a big pro-conservative movement here in the United States of Jews. 67%, I believe that number is right, of American Jews are liberal and voted for Kamala Harris, almost lockstep. But that small quantity are really supporting Israel's nationalism, support Netanyahu. Netanyahu was in Israel last year. Well, yeah, just last year. And Netanyahu has a very good base of support. But let me tell you something about what we see as a mess in the Middle East. It's not the mess that it was a year ago. The Middle East is technically being cleaned up by decades of Israeli planning on how to decapitate foreign powers. Syria itself cleansed itself by taking off the map the last of the confrontation states that stood up against Israel in 1948. Syria fought in 48, 56, 67, 73. And after the peace treaties with Egypt, between Menachem Begin, Anwar Sadat, and Jimmy Carter, Syria was the last confrontation state that had essentially a state of war with Israel. And the only way that they could do that was with Iranian support and Iran supporting Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, giving Bashar al-Assad and his father at the time, Hafiz al-Assad, these stilts in which to hold up. Israel literally decapitated Hezbollah in the stroke of one computer keystroke, killing almost 2,000, killing or wounding 3,000 of their top commanders almost instantaneously. One of the greatest intelligence operations in history. Then Syria collapsed under its own weight of a civil war that started in 2011. So now that group, right, Hayat al-Tahrir al-Sham, right, the HTS, a Turkish-backed group, has said that they are creating an integrated Syria that will no longer be at war with Israel. They see the value of stability. Don't forget, 1 million Syrians left Syria from those areas that Assad was trying to mass murder, went through Turkey, emigrated to countries in Europe. Those people thrived and were sending money back. And you could see a Jordan like Syria, without the monarchy, of course, a Jordan like Syria stabilizing, getting in Western goods, being a neutral country. That has cut Iran off completely by the knees. It even cut off the Iranian backed Shia militia groups in Iraq have declared that they will no longer carry out offensive operations against Israel, and has pushed Iran's 48-year experiment in getting right up to the borders of Jerusalem completely back. Like it's like 1979 again. This is now a fantasy in their head. The last group that they're supporting are the Houthis, and the Israelis just struck them in the last 24 hours, taking out most of the power in the city of Sana'a. They're going to reduce them back to the Stone Ages. And they may be able to occasionally launch a drone or occasionally launch a ballistic missile, but Israel is defending against them. None, I think only one got through in this entire year and hit an apartment that was fired from Yemen. But now Israel is playing hardball, and they're going to make the Yemenis hurt.
Of course, but we've discussed about the three most important, probably most urgent things so far. That is the Greenland craze, Ukraine, and Israel. But I would like to ask you something. We're talking about a democracy. We're not talking about a dictatorship.
I feel like I'm in a dream. That's why I rub my eyes. It's crazy talk.
No problem. I know. This is incredible. I mean, no one 10 years ago thought that we would have had this discussion in 2025. We're talking about a democracy where the power is distributed. We're not talking about Russia or Venezuela or any other dictatorship. So, how much is actually in Trump's hands, and how much will the rest of the power limit him? I don't know if I make myself clear.
Yeah, I understand. The problem is last year, the U.S. Supreme Court essentially gave Trump the powers of a dictator, the powers of a king. Anything he does is official, cannot be held against him. Anything he says is official, cannot be held against him. He could order murder. And if he declares that it's official, then it's legal and sanctionable, and none of the evidence of his government can be used to try him. This is powers Richard Nixon only dreamed of. And if it had gotten into the hands of Kamala Harris, we wouldn't have had any problem thinking about that. But now it's in the hands of a man who views him, first off, a 78-year-old man on the verge of dementia. Let's just be honest. He is, you think Joe Biden was old. Trump's only 2 years younger than him, and Biden's going to retire now. Trump has been given all the powers of King Donald the First. And it's just a question of how crazy it is. Some of the guardrails still exist in the United States. There is an opposition. But the way that the Republicans are talking these days, they no longer believe in the exercise of power, in the rule of law. And I think over time, what you're going to see is you're going to start seeing Trump and the MAGA conservatives start exercising power by fiat, just by declaring that they're going to do something. The president has declared it, therefore it's lawful and authorized. This will turn the United States democracy on its head. If you have my book, The Plot to Destroy Democracy, arguably the best piece of work that I've done. And the subtitle of it is How Putin and His Spies Are Undermining America and Dismantling the West. It's
Definitely. Yeah.
happening. It's happening. All the political groups in that book on the extreme right are now being funded not just by Russia, not just by illiberal groups that are against liberal democracy. Now we have the world's richest man, Elon Musk, has essentially come out as a full-blown fascist, believes that AfD in Germany. I think he thinks Maloney in Italy is just too mild for him. But now he's coming out not for Nigel Farage, but Tommy Robinson, the criminal white supremacist who formed mobs to beat non-white people. He views him as a hero, the richest man in the world. Now he's using X, his platform, to go out and use it as a weapon system against liberal democracy. Then again, the man was born in white supremacist South Africa, right? Came to the United States illegally with, smuggling diamonds, and parlayed other people's work into these billions. And now he's going to use it to destroy democracy. Well, the funny thing is, saw an interesting documentary the other day about the French Revolution. This has existed before in history, and people aren't going to stand for it once they pretty much figure out that oligarchy has now taken control of many governments.
Yes, absolutely. Now, let's talk about something more from a point of view of economy. I remember my Canadian relatives being worried during the first Trump administration that he could have pulled out of NAFTA and imposed
Mm.
duties on exchanges between the United States, Canada, and Mexico. You think that can happen in this second administration, or is it just a dog barking?
Oh, I need another dopium.
No problem. Do you want to come over and have some real
um,
Italian one?
oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Look, let's just stipulate some things very clearly. Donald Trump does not understand what the word tariff means. He has it in his head, his 78-year-old demented head, that a tariff is a tax on foreign goods that a foreign country pays. But the way that laws are written, a tariff as a tax is immediately passed on through increased prices to the consumer that is purchasing those goods. Okay, Donald Trump, because he doesn't understand history, he's illiterate, he's a functional illiterate. People who are talking to him are ridiculously stupid or have their own agendas. It would make no sense to him to tell him that the Smoot-Hawley tariffs in 1929, I believe it was 1921, literally created the Great Depression and sent people jumping out of windows and crashed the American economy. He doesn't understand that. So when he says, people say, oh, he's just using this as leverage. He's just using this as a way to get people to understand, to get them to give him some concession. That's like saying, I'm going to put a gun to your child's head. And if you don't give me candy at Halloween, I will kill that child. That's on a geopolitical, economic sense. That's what you're saying. I live, in the northeastern United States between Pennsylvania and New York. The two largest recipients of power from Canada are Michigan, Pennsylvania, and New York State. Hydroelectric power. Look, Canada only has 40 million people, the population of California, or technically the African American population in the United States. But they are industrious. They are a part of the British Commonwealth. They harness hydroelectric power and they sell that power to the United States, which keeps our prices down. They are the largest exporter of timber to the United States. Oh, I live in a rural area. I have to go to Home Depot and Lowe's all the time. When I buy planks of wood, I have to buy planks by the bundle, right? To on projects that I'm doing. Uh, 2 years ago, there was a massive increase in the price of wood, mainly due to not just the drawdowns from COVID, but just due to economic conditions in Canada where it just wasn't milling the wood. The price of wood went up by almost 50%. Now, I want you to think about whatever the price of a, 8 board feet of wood is going to cost an American contractor if you increase that by 25% instantly. Because Trump says, okay, we'll put a 25% tariff on Canada. It's not going to Canada. It's going to manufacturers who will just turn that around and increase the price 25%, which means every person at Home Depot and Lowe's, if you had been paying $8, which is not realistic, let's say $20, right, for a board of wood, you will be paying 25 to $30 because they're going to add markups on top of that. The increased cost of transportation, the increased cost of doing administration, $30 for a plank of wood instantly overnight. That will affect everyone's bottom line. It will have a cascading effect. People will be fired. Donald Trump doesn't understand what the word tariff means, and it's dangerous to the economy. He could blow up, all right, the free trade agreements between the United States and Canada. Look, here's another interesting thing. Um, most cars in the United States are built for export, right? Most cars that are brought into the United States, and the overwhelming preponderance, over 80% of their parts are made in Mexico, which means now the entire U.S. car industry goes into a state of collapse. Right now, they can barely sell trucks in the United States. A pickup truck that would have cost $30,000 10 years ago, they're selling for $60,000 to $75,000 now, right? Ford F-150, you can't get one for, on average about $50,000. Kick that up to $70,000 MSRP overnight because we've decided to impose tariffs on Mexico. It's madness. I don't even believe we're actually talking about this, but this is obviously the year of imponderable craziness.
Well, Malcolm, let me ask you a final question that is trying to being somehow optimistic. So Trump is so weird in the US history that he has nothing in common with Bush, Reagan, or all the Republican presidents that came before him. So, what is the future of the Republican Party in 4 years from now? Because, of course, this is the last Trump's mandate, and after that, we can probably forget about him because he
Yeah.
cannot run for presidency again. So, what will happen
Well,
to the
or
Republican
so
Party?
you think. He actually has the power to declare. He's hinted that he would declare the 2020 election null and void, and he has the power, according to the Supreme Court, to claim that the amendment that prohibits presidents from running more than 2 terms, doesn't apply to him. He said this, so don't think that more craziness can't happen in the next 4 years. The Republican Party is dead. There is no Republican Party. It's Republican in name only. The party is the MAGA Party. And now he is groomed. He and the South African trio of Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and David Sachs, 3 South African immigrants to the United States, picked J.D. Vance, a young, formerly anti-Trumper, to be their avatar and now vice president of the United States. The possibility of Donald Trump dying, according to the insurance actuarial tables, in the next 4 years is very high. very high. I mean, he could have any kind of medical event that incapacitates him. He's poor health. He eats McDonald's food. He could be one patriotic hamburger away from actually dying in office. He wouldn't be the first president to do that. But then what comes after that is the MAGA party. And the only way that you can do this is to become more extreme than Donald Trump. And I think that horrible things await us in the future. I think these people have a taste for fascism. As I wrote in the book, The Plot to Destroy Democracy, which the Russians went hard at the United States. The key to this was to create an axis of autocrats, and that was Russia, China, North Korea, Venezuela, Iran, sort of Iran, Turkey, and it also was supposed to include Austria. Now we have Slovenia involved, Hungary, and the United States. And it was supposed to change the balance of power away from the Atlantic Alliance that we've had since Normandy in 1944 to a alliance where all of these autocrats have equal power. And America was supposed to be the Western anchor to autocrats, and oligarchs in this world. And we are well on our way to that. Oligarchy has taken hold of America. The question is, are they willing to use force and violence to maintain this?
We don't know. Oh,
you wanted an optimistic outlook. You could just get rid of optimism for the next 4 years. It's going to get worse.
We'll see. Well, you know what puzzles me is that I have a lot of intelligent friends who voted for him because they were disappointed by the current administration.
And what kills me is in what capacity? The stock market is off the charts, and it wasn't because of Donald Trump. It was because of good management. They just don't see good management and good governance as exciting. They're going to get exciting. They're going to everything that they voted for, they're going to get, and they're not going to like it.
We'll find out pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm, many thanks for your time again. And this
My
is the
pleasure.
third. This is actually our fourth interview. The first one was published in an article that was your 9/11 experience. Then we talked about Ukraine, and we talked about your most recent book 2 years ago. And it was a pleasure having you again today. And I look forward to our next time.
It's my pleasure. I'll come. We'll come do this in Italy.
Or the other way around in upstate
So
New
I can
York.
get some good pasta.
Absolutely. You're welcome anytime.
Right,
And thanks everybody else for watching this episode, and see you all next time. Bye bye.